Y'all feeling better now?
I'm feeling so much better. Thanks, Darryl.
You're welcome.
Great. Dance around. Okay.
Start out with Yankee Doodle.
Sure.
Alrighty. Hello, welcome once again at Ed Academy. Darryl.
Laura. Excellent.
Alright, we are here continuing our AFI's Top 100. This is 97, I think?
I do not remember.
Okay.
We did, Ben-Hur was 100.
Yeah. And then the next two we'd already done
Okay.
previous. I don't remember
Alright.
which they were, but anyway.
So
this
it's in the 90s.
Yep. Okay. Yankee Doodle Dandy stars James Cagney, Joan Leslie, Walter Houston, Richard Wharf. Features Irene Manning, George Tobias, Rosemary DeCamp, Gene Cagney, Vera Lewis. John Leslie's singing voice was partially dubbed by Sally Sweetland. It was written by Robert Buckner and Edmund Joseph, directed by Michael Kurtz. Won Academy Awards for Best Actor for Cagney, Best Music, Scoring of a Musical Picture, Best Sound Recording, nominated for Best Actor in a Supporting Role for Houston, Best Director, Best Film Editing, and Best Picture and Best Writing for Original Story. Go.
All right, so I'm going to start with a disclaimer.
Okay.
So there is a scene in this movie where the performers are in blackface.
Oh.
So let's start with that. It was historically accurate to the time. They were vaudevillian performers in the 1800s. And it was a common vaudevillian trope. It was not okay then. It was not okay in 42 when this movie came out. It is not okay now. It is what it is, but I just want to put that forward.
Got it.
Okay. The thing that's fascinating to me about this movie is it was made during World War II, early World War II,
Okay.
so 1942. So this is a clear propaganda,
Yes.
pro-US movie, and it's at a time when Pearl Harbor has just happened and where we literally do not know the outcome of World War II and Nazis. So I always think it's fascinating to go back and watch movies that are created during this time, because part of the reason this movie was created was to drum up some good old, fervor around the U.S. And I think that's what it did. So you've got James Cagney, who is known at that point as a gangster, in the gangster movies and all of his tough guy roles.
That was going to be one of my questions. I was having this conversation with a friend the other day because the only Cagney movies I've ever seen were gangster ones, and we couldn't remember if he went on to do the gangsters or prior to this he was known for gangsters.
He was known for 30s, very early 40s in the gangster movies, but he was a song and dance man who came up through vaudeville.
Okay.
So he actually was a very talented tap dancer and singer. So what's also very interesting is his dancing style and singing style in this movie is very odd. Very straight-legged tap dancing and very sing-talk kind of singing. That is George M. Cohan. That is not Jimmy Cagney. So it's fascinating to me that they went full guns on George M. Cohan. This is a movie about somebody who created patriotic music, who was born on the 4th of July, who had his own style and was basically the man of Broadway. And what's more American than Broadway and the 4th of July and all of these things? And so in 1942, they decide to make this movie for just some feel good.
Okay.
And to me, that's what this movie is. It makes me feel good. So I will just say it. I enjoy this movie. It is not a very good movie, but I thoroughly enjoy this movie because it makes me feel good. I love to see Jimmy Cagney dance because he is such a talented dancer in the way that he is supposed to be dancing in the style of George M. Cohan. If you look at the two of them. If you go out on YouTube, you can see him doing some other dancing in the early 30s, and he is as talented as Fred Astaire, as Gene Kelly,
Really?
as the guys that were coming up at the same time. But he wasn't traditionally attractive, and they put him in the gangster movies, and that's where he found his bread and butter. Also, Fred Astaire was supposed to star in this movie and didn't want to because he did not like the style, and he wanted to do his own kind of fluid style. So I think that it is just literally what it is on the label. It's Yankee Doodle Dandy about some good music, about an interesting guy who from what I've read about him, who knows, was a good guy who had a handshake deal with his partner, who had a loving family, who created some patriotic songs and tried to do his best by the country, won the Congressional Medal of Freedom, and just, again, very, very fun and interesting and huge propaganda. Don't expect anything more than that, and do not expect any negative views or any like complexity in this movie, because it is not terribly complex. It's a traditional movie for a time that needed some traditions. Understand what you're watching and don't expect too much.
And I think I told you before, and I'll tell it for you folks, I watched this movie twice, and I watched it the second time because I watched it the first time and I didn't really understand what it was that I was watching. And I went in, because this movie is on the AFI's top 100, I had expectations.
Right.
Even though I may not enjoy it or like it, it's on their list for a reason. And so I kept looking for those reasons. I was looking for depth. I was looking for exploration. I was looking for beautiful shots. And there are some beautiful shots. But I never got that this is a top 100 movie on anybody's list while watching the movie.
I took it as, I understand that and agree with you, I take it as a placeholder for that type of movie. You know, the Stage Door Canteen, the Fighting Sullivans, the movie of the 40s when we needed some kind of rah-rah propaganda during World War II.
Okay.
So to me, it's a placeholder for that type of movie, and that's why it's on the list, not necessarily for its own merits.
The only thing that came close is the ending after he has come off the stage and film is now becoming a big thing and he couldn't transition into film, and the ending where he is given an opportunity to go back on stage and relive his life again. I was like, okay, there's something I can latch onto, and kind of they're giving me something of depth and character and exploration and growth and all of these things finally, because everything else before was just, this is it, it's static and straightforward. I just didn't see it.
And it really was. It was about a guy who was so patriotic that he tried to enlist in World War I at 39, and whose songs were remembered from World War I to World War II. One of the only interesting pieces that I find interesting is, that there was a made-up tension around the fact that he was playing the president, and was he going to get in trouble for playing the president. The president that he played was Franklin Roosevelt, who was in a wheelchair, and the president that he played on stage was walking and running and dancing. There was no sense of his polio there at all. So again, George Cohan was hiding some things with regard to Roosevelt, because those things didn't come out at that time. And just like this movie kind of hid anything that was negative, because that was not what they were showing at that time.
Okay, and that makes a lot more sense.
I will say one other just teeny tiny little piece is that, for folks who don't know about this, so at one point there's a scene, and this is an Easter egg for people at the time, there's a scene where he's talking to this guy, Eddie Foy, who was George M. Cohan's contemporary. He was the guy who kept spitting in his eye when he was saying, I'm just down there, and I'm getting great press, and they were kind of having this little bit of a spar. Eddie Foy was his contemporary rival at the time, and they actually loved each other dearly, but they were terrible rivals. The actor was Eddie Foy Jr., Eddie Foy's son that played Eddie Foy.
Okay.
And there was a movie a few years later called The Seven Little Foys about Eddie Foy and his family, who were all in show business, played by Bob Hope. And James Cagney played George M. Cohan in that movie.
Oh, okay.
And he wouldn't take a paycheck for it.
Oh.
Because Jim Cagney was a good guy.
Okay.
And then one of the other little pieces of fun fact, I'm sorry, I love this movie, and I like Jim Cagney. One of the other fun facts behind this was, so his sister played his sister in the movie. His brother was a producer in the movie. And one of the reasons they made this movie as well was because James Cagney was a very lefty-left guy at the time, and they were worried about being seen as communists. And so they wanted to show how patriotic they were. Now, he became much more conservative as he grew older. He became very good friends with Ronald Reagan and supported all of his campaigns throughout the years afterwards. But at that point, he was very liberal and was concerned and wanted to make a patriotic movie, so there was a little method to his madness too.
That's interesting to me. Okay, good on him.
So that's Yankee Doodle Dandy. Not a great movie. I understand that. It makes me feel good.
And that's perfectly fine. Again, I had to watch it twice because everything is just so straightforward
Yeah.
that I kept thinking I was missing something, again, because it's on the AFI's list.
Yeah.
And I don't think it deserves to be. I get what you're saying,
Yeah.
that it's a placeholder, a representation of a lot of movies of the time. I totally
Yeah.
understand that. But honestly,
I don't disagree. I don't think it should be on the AFI list either.
maybe
Yeah.
if this is the representation of all those movies, then you don't represent all of those movies. I'm just saying.
I don't disagree.
All right, I don't think we have anything else.
Nope.
I'm gonna say no for me, but
No for me.
see ya.
Bye.